All right, at this time, we will return to the regular Board of Education meeting. We'll have a pledge of allegiance at this time.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
At this time, do we have any public participation? Anyone who would like to address the board? Comments will be limited to 3 minutes per person, or a total not to exceed a total of 30 minutes.
Are we not having a regular board meeting before?
Is it?
Is it just?
This is the regular board.
This is the regular board meeting. I'm just asking if anyone wishes to address the board on agenda board items at this time.
We get a chance at the end for non-agenda board items.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. All right. If not, we will go on to the treasurer's report.
We have to approve the agenda.
Oh, we have to approve the agenda. Got a motion to
moved.
approve the agenda. Thank you. Mr. Howard. Thank you, Mrs. Smith. Call the roll.
Mrs. Arthur,
Yes.
Mr. Bailey,
Yes.
Mr. Powers.
Yeah.
Mrs. Smith,
Yes.
Mrs. Wallace.
Yes.
Motion passes.
And now we will have the treasurer's report. A, approve the minutes of the annual tax budget hearing organizational meeting, January 12th, 2023. B, approve the minutes of the regular board meeting, January 12th, 2023. C, approve the minutes of the special board meeting, January 26th, 2023. D, approval of new grant 2023 EPC wellness grant. E, approve the January financial reports. F, approve January month-end advances. G, approve donations as attached. $200 donated to Terry Pickering, Scott Whitcomb, Gregory, and Constance Van Zant. $100 donated to Sierra Green Memorial Scholarship from Dale and Norma Smith. $200 donated to the Sierra Green Memorial Scholarship from Lorraine Green. And H, approve adjusted estimated receipts for January 2023. I, approve amended appropriations for January 2023. J, approve then and now for REAP in the amount of $3,423.17 for the maintenance department. K, approval of the certification of completion of the OFCC middle school building and high school building renovation. L, approved transportation agreement for the remainder of the 2022-23 school year. And M, approve the treasurer's report items A through L as presented. Any discussion, questions? Do I have a motion to approve the treasurer's report?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
Thank you.
Mr. Bailey,
Yes.
Mr. Powers,
Yeah.
Mrs. Smith,
Yes.
Mrs. Wallace,
Yes.
Mrs. Arthur.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, this time, Dr. Woodruff, do you have anything to present?
There will be no superintendent's update this evening.
All right, thank you. At this time, we'll move to new business. A, approve the Greeneview High School Debate Club for the 2022-23 school year, supervised by David Smith. B, approve out-of-state band and choir trip March 2024. C, approve the Ohio High School Athletic Association membership for the 2023-2024 school year. D, board action on complaint heard in executive session under board policy 9130. Do I have a motion? Is there a motion from a board member regarding the subject matter of tonight's executive session?
Okay, I move that the board uphold the actions of district administrators regarding the district's investigation of an assault on a student that occurred on December 2nd, 2022 at the Greeneview Middle School. The board recognizes that certain actions could have been taken more swiftly and that certain changes have already taken place to provide greater supervision during unstructured times such as lunch. The board authorizes the president to notify the complainants within 10 business days regarding the board's decision, which should include guidelines for the handling of incidences which may occur in the future.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mrs. Smith.
Mr. Powers,
Yeah.
Mr. Bailey,
Yes.
Mrs. Smith,
Yes.
Mrs. Arthur,
Yes.
Mrs. Wallace.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, approve new business items A through D as presented. Do I have a motion for that?
Yeah.
Thank you,
And then
Mr. Powers.
Second.
Thank you.
Mrs. Smith,
Yes.
Mrs. Wallace,
Yes.
Mrs. Arthur,
Yes.
Mr. Bailey,
Yes.
Mr. Powers.
Yeah.
Motion passes.
Okay, we move on to personnel. A, approve the following supplemental coaches for the 2022-2023 school year. Jim Arisman, revised contract to 37.5% for ninth grade girls basketball coach. New contract for 62.5% for head girls basketball coach. Claire Briggs, change from volunteer to girls ninth varsity assistant coach, 62.5%. And Vince Preparo, revised contract to 37.5% for head basketball coach. B, approve the following classified substitutes for the 2022-2023 school year. Custodian Jeannie Sargent, contingent upon proper certification, background check, and completion of required paperwork. Approve the following certified subs for the 2022-23 school year. Kioki Moody, contingent upon proper certification, background check, and completion of required paperwork. D, approve the dock and pay for Jeannie Sargent, half day on January 26, 2023. E, approve for dock and pay for Billy Travis, half day on February 10th, 2023. And F, approve personnel items A through E as presented. Do I have a motion?
I'll move.
Thank you.
Second.
Mrs. Wallace,
Yes.
Mrs. Arthur,
Yes.
Mr. Bailey,
Yes.
Mr. Powers,
Yeah.
Mrs. Smith.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, there is no discussion at this time. We will invite public participation on non-agenda items. Again, limited to 3 minutes per person, not to exceed 30 minutes total. Anyone wish to address the board? Are you keeping the time the same?
Yes, I am.
Thank you.
This is Kylie. She is 13 years old and is a seventh grader at Greeneview Middle School. She sustained concussion on December 2nd, not playing soccer, basketball, or volleyball, or any other sport in the hallway of her school. This girl is brave. She is my hero. She stood up for herself in the lunchroom and refused to give up her seat at her table. She is not normally a victim of bullying, but she was this day. As a result of her not giving up her seat, she was falsely accused of using a racial slur so that these students could try to justify what they did. Kylie was cleared of any wrongdoing and was not attacked and was only attacked for refusing to move from her lunch seat. If she had to do it over, I bet she would do the same thing and stand up for herself because that is the right thing to do, even if it would mean sustaining another concussion. This is why she is my hero. While leaving the lunchroom, Kylie was violently pulled to the ground from behind by her hair. She was then repeatedly punched in the face and head, while two other students were kicking her in the body and legs while she was still on the ground. Fortunately, 3 staff members were able to end the assault after about 20 seconds. We pressed charges against the 3 girls, and they were all charged with felonious assault. 2 of them had pled guilty already and are awaiting sentencing on March 1st. We also have been able to get a protection order for 5 years against the girls, which will protect Kylie until she is out of school. We have done everything we can to protect Kylie. I wish the principal of the middle school could say the same thing. That's why we are here. The response of Mrs. Calloway for handling this assault was irresponsible. Waiting to call parents an hour and 13 minutes after the assault is not acceptable. Once she saw the video, she knew the violent nature of the attack. I've thought about this daily and still can't imagine why you wouldn't want to notify parents. First responders should have been notified as well. When I called Mrs. Calloway, she immediately said, "I can't fix this one. I just had to call you." What does that mean? I am sure she thought she was talking to someone else and makes me question how many things does she have to fix. I was also asked her to notify law enforcement that we wanted to file a report filed, but she never did. Why didn't she? I also asked her I called them myself when I knew that Mrs. Calloway hadn't. If any of you would have witnessed this in Walmart, Kroger's, or in a park, I'm willing to bet that everyone in this room would have taken their phone out and called 911. What's the difference for Kylie? Why not call for her Kylie? The so-called investigation that Dr. Woodruff completed had made discrepancies in it. An investigation considers all information from witnesses, not just from two administrators. Mrs. Calloway did ask Kylie minutes after the assault if she was okay, and Kylie said yeah. However, this is shortly after she just got the beating of her life. I wouldn't say she was in shock, but she was definitely shaken up in the middle of an adrenaline dump. The investigation fails to mention that Kylie was asking to go home and wanted her mom. She later complains of having a headache and still no phone call was made for another 33 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Let me see it.
During our second meeting with Dr. Woodruff, she concurred with Mrs. Cowart with her handling of this incident. She obviously doesn't want to hold her staff accountable. So I am asking this board to hold both administrators accountable for the poor response on December 2nd. I understand that kids are going to be mean and bullies are going to be bullies, but Greeneview has got to do better when it comes to the safety of our students.
Thank you.
Thank you.
What you permit, you promote. Where is the line being drawn for reclassifying behaviors from sexual harassment to inappropriate language and a sexual assault to inappropriate touching? When is it time to finally admit that kids not being kids and it's bullying that is actually taking place in these schools? In your policies and procedures, as well as the student handbook, it is very clearly written out where this line is drawn. Why are we not following this? Where is the line drawn when these are implemented? Who is accountable for ensuring that these are actually being followed? We're looking for accountability and support from the administration. We want collaboration to not only resolve issues that are being faced, but to also bring the community and district together. You're laying the foundation for our youth and their future. By allowing these acts to go unnoticed and uncorrected, you're teaching them that there is no limit and that these behaviors are acceptable. You're also teaching the kids that are receiving end of these actions or simply seeing them happen to know that their voice means nothing and to remain silent. Transparency is the last thing we're looking for. Last year in the incident in elementary, it took 4 emails to the principal before we received a call over a week later. What's the policy on that or the procedure in place for that? That's unacceptable. I will ask these final questions. How does the elementary have 0 reported incidents of bullying and harassment within the last 3 years? Who ultimately decides what is defined and reported as bullying and harassment? And why are we hiding these actions? I will leave you with this again. What you permit, you promote.
Sir, what is your name, please?
Martin Ellis.
Thank you.
Yes, please state your name at the beginning of your comments. Thank you.
Rebecca Hackney. On December 2nd, 2022, an assault took place at the middle school on my daughter, Kylie Hackney. I was called and told that it was an altercation. However, that was clearly not the case. I was called at least an hour or more after the video was viewed, and Kylie had asked on 2 different occasions, once to go home and once that she wanted her mom. I don't and still don't see how it was found to be okay to wait that long, and especially after the video was viewed and it was seen that she had clearly had her head slammed into the floor and punched in the head and the rest of her body kicked repeatedly. I and my husband should have been contacted immediately to see if we wanted medical attention for her. However, this clearly did not happen. From the outside looking in, into the situation, you may as well have told me that her well-being or possible internal injuries were not that important. Is this how you would expect to have your child treated after an assault or attack such as this? Well, let's just think about this for a second. Not likely. If you told yourself differently, then you would most certainly be lying. And I'd tell you to go home and tell your child the situation that took place and that you were okay with how things were handled. Just look into their eyes and tell them that you would have handled things the same way if it had happened to them. Just tell them. I can most certainly guarantee that nobody could do that. Well, guess what? That's what I had to do. And that's not okay. That's not okay. I would much rather send my child to a school where I know that there are instances that have taken place within the district that were handled to the good and safety of the children than to the sake of showing that there are 0 instances of bullying and such. I know that I could pull my children out of the district. However, there are many amazing teachers and other staff members within our schools that I know didn't agree with how this was handled and will do everything they can in the future situation does arise to do their best to make sure things go a lot differently. Those of you, and you know who you are, that were in charge or investigated this situation, I pray that you can go home tonight, lay your head down and sleep thinking you did what was right, because you didn't.
Hi, Emily Earl. I'm here today to express my extreme concern over the lack of communication that's happening at the elementary building. I just want to start by saying I'm in my 17th year of teaching. My husband's in his 21st. We are avid supporters of everything education. We've experienced multiple times this year where absolutely no communication has been returned after phone calls or emails to Principal Hayes. I have a kindergartner who is also our first student in Greeneview school system that experienced a tragic situation earlier this year. After a very shocking dinner conversation with my 5-year-old, we learned he had been sexually assaulted by a much older girl on the school bus. My son told us about this incident on a Tuesday evening at dinner, and we immediately turned around and emailed and called and left a voicemail from Mr. Hayes, outlining the seriousness of the incident. With no return phone call from Mr. Hayes the following day, we called him back and later did eventually reach him after school. But nothing happened from there. So that Friday, 4 days after informing him of the situation, we still had no reply, and at that point contacted Superintendent Woodruff. Dr. Woodruff was quick to reply and letting us know that she would contact Mr. Hayes about the situation. It was not until almost a week after my son had told us about this incident to me that we received any information about what had actually happened to him, a 5-year-old who was assaulted on the bus. It took us contacting the superintendent and the superintendent contacting the principal for us to even receive a reply about the drastic situation. Unfortunately, this is continuing to be a trend that we have experienced when it comes to any communication with Mr. Hayes. In our very short time, first year being of Greeneview school system, I continue to be frustrated and discouraged by the lack of communication. My most recent frustration comes from the apparent lack of concern and disregard for any parent involvement with the elementary building, particularly concerning PTO. It's incredibly disheartening to want to actively be involved in your child's education, support the school, support the teachers, support everything you believe in, and have no one that welcomes that involvement. Mr. Hayes scheduled the PTO meetings for 4 p.m., which not only is a time when working parents are still at work, but parents who are at home or work from home can't even get their kids off the bus by the time the meeting starts. As soon as we saw the PTO schedule posted online, we contacted Mr. Hayes with our concerns for the inability of any parent to make this meeting or be involved. We reached out in multiple emails with no response, multiple phone calls with no response. Since this is a habit we experienced previously, we then contacted Dr. Woodruff, also expressing our concern. Dr. Woodruff did reply and say she would talk to Mr. Hayes and he would get back to us. He left us a message of which we tried to return, and then over weeks and weeks passed and still no reply from Mr. Hayes. We followed up with emails listing dates and times available when he could reach out and called back and still no return phone call. I'm a graduate of Greeneview and loved all 13 years that I was in Greeneview schools. I loved every moment of it. And I convinced my husband to come out here. So having this disheartening and frustrating situation in our very first year in this district ever just leads us to extreme concern for what the future holds in this district. We desperately want to be advocates within our community for the PTO, our teachers, our administration, and upcoming levies that are very important to our children of our son's age. We feel that the lack of communication is blocking us from being those positive advocates. I strongly encourage you to take a look at this.
Thank you. Thank you. there anyone else that will just address the board? All right, thank you. At this time, do I have a motion for adjournment?
Move. Second.
Mrs. Wallace,
Yes.
Mrs. Arthur,
Yes.
Mr. Bailey,
Yes.
Mr. Powers.
Yeah.
Mrs. Smith.
Yes.
Motion passes. We are adjourned at 7:20.